The president addressed Chinese trade tensions on Air Force One this morning as he was headed to Israel. Watch.
I think we're going to be fine with China. Look, I have a great relationship with President Xi. He's a very tough man. He's a very smart man. He's a great leader for their country. He's a great leader. And I have a great relationship with him. I think we'll get it set.
China reporting its exports to the United States plummeted 27% in September, year over year, saying that its global exports are at a new high. President Trump imposing an additional 100% tariff on Chinese goods with new controls on critical software set to take effect on November 1st. That was in response to last week's news that Beijing announced major new export controls, including rare earth minerals controls and export restrictions. The president called the move hostile and a moral disgrace. Beijing vowed to retaliate if the president does not back down with any additional tariffs. But President Trump is quelling investor fears, saying this will all work out. The president posted, "Don't worry about China. It will all be fine." Highly respected President Xi Jinping just had a bad moment. He does not want depression for his country, and neither do I. The USA wants to help China, not hurt it. I spoke with Vice President J.D. Vance about it yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures.
They basically, not just with the United States, but with the entire world, threatened to completely cut off trade for critical resources, critical minerals, things that all of us rely on. And what the United States has is we have a lot of leverage. But we also think that we can have a positive relationship with the People's Republic of China, but not if the Chinese go down this pathway of cutting off the entire world from access to some of the goods that they produce. And Maria, this really highlights why the president, it was so important that he declared a national emergency and implemented these tariffs in the first place. The fact that the People's Republic of China, the fact that they have so much control over critical supply in the United States of America, that is the definition of a national emergency. But unless we have access to this tariff authority, it's going to be very hard to negotiate with China, and it's going to be very hard for us to reshore some of these critical supplies and goods that we absolutely need for our own economy.
Joining me now is the Gatestone Institute senior fellow, Gordon Chang. Gordon, things are certainly deteriorating between the U.S. and China. We think that the meeting between President Trump and Xi Jinping is on at the end of the month, but we're not sure after these most recent issues with a 100% tariff now from President Trump on China. Your reaction?
Well, first of all, we're seeing a lot of friction inside the Chinese political system, which you've been talking about since February. And that means nobody in Beijing is willing to make serious concessions to the United States because that's politically dangerous. But also there's another factor, and that is Xi Jinping at this moment is extremely arrogant. And I'm not sure that he's clearly in touch with the economic realities of the relationship between the U.S. and China. And he thinks he probably has a lot more bargaining power than he in fact has. You know, as our vice president said, we have enormous leverage over the Chinese economy. We're the trade deficit country. That means we hold most of the high cards in all of this.
Yeah, and I also spoke with Vice President J.D. Vance about what the U.S. is going to do next to stop China's aggressiveness. And I mentioned, once again, all those Chinese companies we have here in America trading on our exchanges that are tied to the Chinese military. Watch. You do have economic leverage. You've got lots of Chinese companies traded on U.S. exchanges right now. Many of those are tied to the Chinese military. Would you support yanking those companies off of our U.S. exchanges? America's exchanges are the deepest, most liquid capital markets in the world.
So, Maria, the president is open to everything, and he's going to pursue, obviously, America's interests decisively. These rare earth minerals, the magnets, our computer chips were actually invented. Silicon chips were invented in the United States of America. Now Taiwan, just off the coast of China, makes nearly 100% of the computer chips in the world economy. We were put in this position by failed leadership. It is a national emergency, and the president is doing everything that he can to get us out of this mess. It's not going to happen in 8 months. It's going to happen in some cases through negotiation, in some cases through bringing some of this critical supply back to the United States of America. It's going to be a delicate dance, and a lot of it is going to depend on how the Chinese respond. We're going to find out a lot in the weeks to come about whether China wants to start a trade war with us or whether they actually want to be reasonable.
Yeah, Gordon, we'll see, but the president has a lot at his disposal to actually keep China in line, but I think he's walking a balance here because he knows today we are still incredibly reliant on the Chinese supply chain. He does not want to disrupt America, so he's walking a balance here, but he's got a lot at his disposal. What would you recommend would be most important for the U.S. to do to react to what China has done here on rare earth minerals?
Well, I think the important thing is what President Trump announced on Friday, and that is to go forward with those additional 100% tariffs. That brings the general tariff rate on Chinese products into the U.S. somewhere about 155%, and that essentially cuts off trade. China right now is more trade dependent than any other time in its history. And Xi Jinping knows that because his economy is not growing at the 5.2% pace that they claim for the second quarter. It's more like zero, maybe a little above, maybe a little bit below, but they need the U.S. market because we account for about 34% of global consumer spending. And although he can divert some exports to other countries, he can't replace us. So President Trump, I think, has gotten exactly the right tactic for this.
Yeah, it's also interesting to see that China comes out with these restrictions right in the middle of President Trump's 20-point peace plan, where we are watching history unfold right now. You've got John Ratcliffe and Stephen Miller and Stephen Witkoff and Jared Kushner and Ivanka all in Israel with President Trump right now. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is thanking President Trump for the ceasefire hostage deal as all of the hostages are now back out of captivity and about to reunite with their families, Gordon. I thought that was interesting that China decided to bust up all of the good news with this announcement in the middle of it, Gordon. We'll keep following all of that. Thank you, sir.